Okay, we are back with another episode. So we've been looking at the word diamond. So today we're at the letter O, which in my mind stands for outcome. So it's really important that you decide where you are as far as your life, how you see the world, where you are in different areas of your life. It's important that you figure out what you want to go after, right? But one of the things that we want to think about is outcome thinking. And outcome thinking is different than having a goal, or different than saying, oh, someday I'd like to have this, or maybe I can do this. Outcome is you're committed to an outcome. You're specifically committed to an outcome. Like a wedding's coming up in, let's say, a week or a month or a year. Maybe it's your wedding. Maybe you're going to a wedding. And your outcome is, I want to get in that suit, or I want to get in that dress, or I want to be able to look a certain way. So your outcome has already been set. So maybe you need to lose weight. And there's so many things you could do, but we don't want to get in the weeds with that. We don't want to get in the weeds with that. And if you get in the weeds, sometimes you get overwhelmed because there's so many ways for you to lose weight. So the outcome is really simple. You want to show up and you want to be able to fit into that dress or suit or whatever it is, right? That's it. It's really, truly clear. And then how you get there, that's a whole different story. Now, here's the reason why I mention this. I do a lot of mind reading, and I also do a lot of sales. And they are kind of connected because I start to see patterns with people. I said to someone the other day, I love to sell. I love to be on the phone. I love to connect with people, and people think that's crazy. But here's why it's not crazy. After a while, you start seeing patterns of people's thinking and behavior. And after a while, you realize there's nothing that somebody can say or do that's surprising, because after a while, their patterns are just being repeated over and over again. Somebody will say, well, let me think about it, right? I've seen that pattern a lot. Or let me call you back on Tuesday, and they never call you back. Or somebody says, wow, this sounds interesting. When can we do this? These are patterns. And like if you only talk to 5 people in a year, I don't think you're going to see patterns. I really don't. But if you talk to 5 people a day or 5 people in an hour, after a couple months, you start seeing patterns of the way that people think. I have a new show that I'm working on. It's called How to Focus on How People Think Without Being a Mind Reader. Now, I think a lot of people would love to see this show. It's kind of a lecture, but it's really a show, but it has a message. How to focus on what people are thinking without being a mind reader. And what it comes down to is, if you want to know what people are thinking, all you have to do is really listen to their words and listen to their actions of what they do. There's patterns. And so I'm in the process of putting this together. I think it should be out by 2024, and I'm looking forward to bringing it to businesses in corporate America, especially with salespeople where, people are confused about the sales process. This will take away all confusion, and it could deal with loved ones, people you work with. You don't have to be a mind reader. You don't need to know tricks to be a mind reader. All you have to do is figure out what people are saying and what they're not saying, and figure out what they're doing and what they're not doing, and to be really clear on this. See, a lot of times we get distracted. There's billions. George Miller wrote this paper in 1956 called The Magical Number of 7, and what he said was there's billions of things that are going on at any moment, and a lot of times we're not aware of it. But when we really focus on another person's behavior or what they're thinking or saying or doing, we can really narrow it down. And a lot of times we don't notice it until after the fact. We'll go back and say, oh, I didn't realize that that's what went down last month or last year, right? Because you reflect on it. You start putting the pieces together. Now, here's the reason why I'm saying this. In outcome thinking, like losing weight or making money or running a business or raising your productivity, it does require you to examine your thinking process. Your thinking process. Not mine and not anyone's else. Not anybody else's thinking process. It comes down to you examining your patterns of thinking. Now, in NLP, we talk about these overarching meta patterns of the way that people construct reality. We all construct reality different. We all see the world differently. But in my mind, there's two that I pull from the NLP world. One is we either chunk up or we chunk down. And another way of saying it is we either look at the big picture or we look at the details or the small picture. Now, I tend to be big picture oriented. In other words, when I want to do something or when I'm focused on doing something, I look at the big picture. Now, maybe it's because I'm a Capricorn. I don't know if that's true. But I see the big picture, and then after I see the big picture, I figure out the steps to get there. That's my process, right? Now, there are some people, if you hang some kind of goal in front of them or some kind of vision in front of them, or you encourage them to go after their dreams, they might not construct the big picture first. They may say, all right, I really have to think about all the details that go into this. And what that means is they're going to take some paper and they're going to write down, this is step number 1. This is what I got to do now. This is step number 2. This is this is 3. And step number 4, actually step number 4 is probably not something I need to do now. I could probably move step 3 first and do that. And I'm not actually sure, so they get tied into the details, right? And there's nothing wrong with this. If I was going to a neuroscience, what am I trying to say? A doctor, let me just make it simple. If I were to go to a doctor and, I'm not big picture, right? And he says, well, we got to do this thing. And I go, okay, are you sure you went through all the steps? You sure you crossed your eyes? And I mean, not crossed your eyes. Wait a minute, hold on. I'm not doing editing in this, so we're going to just say this. What would we say? Cross the T's, right? See? Cross the T's. Dot the I's. So a detailed-oriented person starts with those details. I'm not a detailed-oriented person. So a lot of times when I sit down with my clients or I sit down with people I want to get into their way of thinking, I'll ask them, do you see the big picture first and then work your way down to the details, or do you start with the weeds or the details and work your way up to the big picture? Now, why do I say this? Well, when it comes to outcome, it is possible that, okay, you want to do something like, let's take the analogy of losing weight by next year for this wedding, and you start making your list and you look at the details. It's possible you can get distracted because you just have too many choices. You can do that diet, you can do this diet, you can hire this person, you can do this slim fast thing. There's hundreds of things for you to do, and if you don't keep the big picture in front of you, it is possible that you can get caught up in the weeds and the details and you just never get back to it. The reason why I mention this is it's very important to figure out not only your outcome, but how you move towards your outcome. And there's nothing wrong with my approach or your approach or his approach or this person's approach. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter as long as you understand what your approach is and you can get to the outcome. So years ago, I was working at a college. And we were to bring in a celebrity, and I was overseeing the whole event. I was kind of like the event planner. My boss, who was the president of the organization, was very detailed oriented. Like, he would say to me, like on day 1, okay, he would say, you got to make sure you have bottled water up near the podium for the speaker. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me, right? Like, are you kidding? Are you kidding? And he goes, no, look, we got to start with, is this going to be outside or inside? Is it going to rain that day? I could not believe it. But I understand it and I honor it because that's a great way of seeing the world. You get all your details. Like if I was going to go to court tomorrow and I was a lawyer, I want to know all the details. I don't want to just show up and go, my client's innocent, big picture. Here's why he's innocent. He wasn't there on the scene. He has an alibi, right? All of these different details, right? So when it comes to outcome thinking, you have to figure out how you construct reality and how you go about moving towards your goal. Very important. Do you chunk up towards the big picture? Does that motivate you? Or do you look at the details and start there and then work your way? It doesn't matter which way you do it. All that matters is that you do something, you have an outcome. So let's talk a little bit about outcomes. I think the big challenge with this is people get caught up in the means to the outcome. The means to the outcome. Let me explain. So let's say you decide to do something. You have an outcome of losing weight to go to this wedding. And you try a diet and it doesn't work, right? It doesn't work. And you're like, that's it, I'm done. It doesn't work. So you are attached to the means, all right? So years ago, I went to a graphic designer and I said, I need a website, right? So the first thing I did was I sat down with a photographer, got some photos, hired a graphic designer. We had the website up in a month. That's what we did. However, what I learned in the process was I had the big picture, but I didn't understand the details of the messaging. It wasn't until years later, okay? So this is what we talk about, having the cart before the horse. However, I started. I had an outcome. I desired to have a website. I got the website, but what I didn't realize is I didn't have the messaging right. I didn't even know what the messaging was back in 2016. That's the truth. I literally just started, moved towards that direction, and did the best that I could, and then got feedback from other people, read books, hired different people, and I figured it out along the way. Now, the reason I tell you this is because it's possible to get stuck, create the website, realize it's not working, and then just say, oh, the website's not working, I'm done, I quit, it's over. Outcome thinking requires us, me, you, not to be attached to the means, not to be attached to what happens. It's really important that we don't get caught up in that. There's many ways to create a website. There's many ways to lose weight. There's many ways to get to Chicago, right? We can get on a plane, we can fly to Chicago. Of course, if we live in Chicago, that doesn't make sense. Or we could walk to Chicago, we could take a Uber to Chicago, we could rent a bus and get to Chicago, we could take a train to get to Chicago. There's so many different means to get to our outcome. I see what happens with a lot of people, and sometimes it happens with me, is we get attached to the means of the outcome. You know, we have this goal, or we have this outcome, and we try something to get there. And that thing doesn't really get us to where we want to get to. So we go, oh, that's it, I'm done. And guys, I have to say, this is most people. Most people, for some reason, they get married to their outcome by means of their means. Does that make sense? In other words, they're so attached to their means that when the means doesn't work, they're just done. They're just done with it. Like, I tried this and it didn't work. You know, Tony Robbins has a saying, he goes, yeah, I tried it and it didn't work. Oh, really? What did you try? I tried everything. Oh, okay. All right. Well, what do you mean you tried everything? Well, I tried 1,000 things. Okay, you tried 1,000 things? Yeah, I tried 1,000 things. Well, actually, the truth is I tried these 2 things over and over again and they didn't work. That's most people. Most people get stuck because, first of all, they don't understand the way they think, either big picture or chunking down or chunking up. That's a big thing. And then second, they get married to their means. The means, the thing that they want, they think this is the only way to get it. And when that falls through, you know, I have this friend, and this friend was going to introduce me to the love of my life. And, you know, he died yesterday in a car accident, so I guess I'll never meet the love of my life. That's what I'm talking about. You're so attached to the vehicle or the instrument or the means, right, in this case, that when it doesn't work, you just say, well, I guess it wasn't meant to be. I will tell you that there's another way of thinking about this, but I'm not going to tell you now because we're going to take a commercial.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Do you wish you could sharpen your focus on what matters most to you and achieve more? Then you owe it to yourself to read Greg's ebook at greatdwyerebook.com. That's www.greatdwyerebook.com. Download it today and give it away. As always, we want to thank you for listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show on Building Fortunes Radio with motivational speaker Greg Dwyer. Now back to our show. Take it away, Greg.
Okay, we are talking about the outcome and specifically how we construct reality. Do we see the big picture first? Do we see the details first? It doesn't matter as long as you know how you think. And then if you're working with other people, you know, like I'm working on a project right now with other people. They're coming at the project with different eyes, different meta patterns. They might look at the big picture. They might look at the details. It's okay. Collaboration is a good thing. So here's my story, true story. I'm going to Boston this week, and I'm meeting a friend of mine, Tim, and we are going to record a speaker demo reel for my business on the importance of focus. Now, let's say I walk out the door Wednesday or Thursday of this week, and I get in my car and I turn the key, and the car doesn't start. There's a couple choices I have. One choice is I throw down the keys on the ground and I pout and I say, well, I guess this wasn't meant to be. This isn't going to happen. Woe is me. Yeah, right? That's my internal dialogue. I have an outcome of going up to Boston and to film this. I've already paid for it. I got a shirt, got a brand new set of shoes, everything's ready. Get in the car doesn't start, and I go, that's it, I'm done. That's being married to the means, right? That's being connected to not the outcome, the means. This is where most people live. It's where most people live. Rather than saying, well, I have another car in the driveway. All I have to do is move it around, right? That's another way of thinking of it. Or I'll call an Uber, or I will take a flight to Boston, or I will call my sister and ask her to drive me, or I'll go buy a car today. Doesn't matter. If you are attached to the means, you're not connected to the outcome. It's not a judgment. It's just that this is where most people live. They're so connected to the vehicle that when the vehicle fails them, they just give up. Now, I don't know why I think this way. I have thought this way all of my life. I have something I'm going after, and I'm very clear on the outcome. And when the means fails me, I just move on to something else. I've always thought this way. And as far back as I can remember, that's the way I have always been. Always been. Now, the first time I had someone introduce this to me was Brian Clemmer. Brian died a few years ago. I think it was, I want to say it was 2001, but I don't remember. But I got to meet Brian through the seminar industry, and then he asked me to work for him, and I did a little work for him. It wasn't a long relationship, but it was a wonderful relationship. But Brian would do something in a live seminar where he would bring 50 people up on stage and put them on stage right. And then he would say, I want you to walk across the stage. Just walk across the stage. So we would walk across the stage. No big deal. Then he would say to us, we want you to walk back to the other part of the stage, but we don't want you to walk the same way you just did. So what's easy? You turn around and you walk backwards, right? So the first time you walked forward, second time you walked backwards. No big deal. Everybody could do it. Not a big deal. Then he would say to us, I want you to do it again, but don't do it the same time you did it. The first two times. You have to do it a different time, a different way. You have to walk across the stage not the way you did it before. You got to find a different means. So people would crawl like a crab, right? Or people would skip across the stage, right? They would just skip. Now, what would go through my mind when I heard about this, or when other people did it, and I heard some feedback, is you have this idea in your head, oh no, there's not enough resources here. I don't know what to do. Like, I just tried everything. I just walked across the stage, and then I walked backwards, and then I walked as a crab, and then I skipped. Oh, I guess I could hop. Yeah, I could hop. So, okay, so then you hop. And then you get to the point where you feel frustrated, where you go, I don't know. I could take my glasses off, and you take your glasses off. You take your glasses off, then you walk across the stage, right? Or you take your glasses and you put them on top of your head. Or like I have a shirt on, maybe you button your shirt up a little higher, right? So the first idea is, I am out of resources. I don't have any money. I don't have any time. I tried everything. I don't know how to do this. Oh my gosh, I guess it's not meant to be. That's being married to the means. Outcome thinking is, I'm going to this wedding and I'm going to fit into that dress or I'm going to fit into that suit. And I really don't know what the means are. I don't know if it's starving myself, intermediate fasting. I don't know if it's, you know, going to the doctor and having them staple my stomach. That's a third one I'm thinking of. Maybe I just go on a hunger strike, right? Maybe I go online and I say, this is day number 25 and I haven't eaten in 25 days. I don't know, it doesn't matter. This is what I learned from Brian Clemmer that I've been doing my whole life. I don't think most people do this. I think what most people do is they get married to the means, and then when the means doesn't work, they just give up. So think about what you want in your business or your personal life, and when you're focusing on this, using your imagination and putting yourself in a trance, don't get caught up in how it's going to happen. Like, who knows how it's going to happen? So about 2 weeks ago, I was outside cutting my grass. I don't think I told this story recently. So I was cutting my grass and I looked up at the trees and I noticed that the trees were over parts of my roof. And my brothers told me this, you gotta do something about this, Gregory. I'm like, yes, I'll do it. So last week or 2 weeks ago, I'm looking at the trees over the roof and I say, you know, I better do something about this, but I don't want to do it now because it's what, August, July. I'll do it in the fall because the leaves will be there on the ground, I should say, and I can get up there on the roof and take care of it myself. Knowing full well that I wasn't going to get up on the roof. I was just procrastinating, right? So this was a Thursday, I think, or a Wednesday. The very next day I woke up and I heard chainsaws and I heard trucks, and I woke up and I walked out my front door and I see that there's a whole crew, about 10 people, cutting down trees in my neighbor's yard, right? And I'm like, okay, I have to act on this. Like, this is a coincidence that I have to benefit from this. So I walked across the street. I said, who's in charge? They said, this guy Tim. I said, hi Tim, my name's Greg. Can you come over to my house? Which is just walking across the street. So he comes over and I said, listen, you see this? He goes, yeah, that's not good. I said, you see this over here? He goes, yeah, that's not good either. I says, what do you think? He says, we should cut it down for you. We'll be done by noon tomorrow. We'll come over and cut this down for you. And I said, how much? And then he just told me. And I reached out my hand and I shook his hand. Done deal, right? Now, this is why I know I'm a big thinker, in the sense that I don't think of the details. I don't. All I know is my outcome was, this guy's coming over with the crew tomorrow and they're going to cut down this stuff. And the price that he gave me was fair. It wasn't crazy. It wasn't ridiculous. I thought it was really fair. And he said to me, I'll see you tomorrow. I said, okay. So then I went up to get a cup of coffee, and as I'm driving there, I'm thinking, well, how am I going to make this happen? Okay, where am I going to get the money? Okay, I have the money, just got to move the money. Okay, I also have to move the cars, then I have to move my schedule because there's a few. All of that came later. All of that came later. I knew my outcome, and once I knew my outcome, I just simply acted on it, and the details came later. Why? Because the outcome was so important to me that the means or the details of how it was going to happen were secondary. I think the reason why most people get caught in the weeds is they have a little checkoff box. They go, okay, well, I got to do this first, right? That's got to happen first. Then I got to do this. And then I got to do, and I think what it comes down to is control. People want to have control that, okay, I got to check that box, I got to check this box, I got to check that box. Once I get all these 10 boxes checked off, then I can do then I can make it happen. And I'm not putting that down. I think that's fine. However, I have learned over the years that people who are very successful make quick decisions fast, they don't think about it, and then they figure out how they're going to do it. I remember one time I was working at a college, right? And this woman called me up and she says, you want to go to Ireland? I says, yeah, sure, I want to go to Ireland. She says, I wish you had called me a week ago. I says, why? She says, I can get you to Ireland VIP for, like, I forget the price. I want to say $500, maybe it was $900. I don't remember. She says, it's a fam trip. It's a familiarization trip. You've never traveled with us before, right? I said, no. She says, well, it's VIP. You're going to be staying in castles. You're going to be staying in 5-star hotels. I said, no way. She said, but you know, I need to know by today. I said, I'm in. That's it. And then after that was over, I was working for this college. I went to my boss and I says, listen, I'm going to Ireland. He's like, okay. That's what I'm talking about. You have a, now he could have said, no, don't get me wrong. He could have said, what are you, crazy? You're not doing that, which would have been fine, right? But what I'm saying is, if you're going to go after an outcome, don't be attached to the means. Unless, of course, you're going to be flexible. You know, I think that's the key. If this doesn't work, you try something else. I mean, you've heard this probably from Tony Robbins a lot. He says, look, how long would you give a baby to learn how to walk? If the baby tries this and it doesn't work, how long, you know, you're going to try this, you're going to try that, you're going to try that, until you get what you want. This is the secret to success. But it also requires you to understand how you think. Are you thinking big picture, or are you thinking small details? How do you construct reality? I think that's really important. Let me look at my time. The last thing I'll tell you is this. It's a little story. It happened the other night. I went with a friend of mine to see this show, Pippin, right? Now I'm sitting in the front row, aisle seat, I think it was A1. Small production. I had seen the show in summer stock. In fact, I worked in summer stock. I saw it in high school. I've seen it in New York. I've probably seen the show about 15 times. Like, I know the music, I know the lines. I actually, when I was in high school, I auditioned for the part. I didn't get it, but I love this play. The name of the play is called Pippin. They just ended last night. So I'm sitting in the front row, right? Minding my own business, enjoying the show, having a great time. So there's a scene in the show where someone throws the MC a cane, you know, like a giant cane, a black cane with white tips. And all of a sudden the cane comes from the wings and she does not catch it. She just doesn't catch it. And so it bounces off her hand and it comes flying towards me. This is what happened. I didn't think about anything. All I did was I bent down towards the orchestra pit where the orchestra pit would be. Of course, this was a small theater, so it didn't have it. But I bent down towards the base of the stage, if you will. And I just grabbed the cane without even thinking, and then without standing up, this is important, without standing up, I handed her the cane. I didn't want to stand up and hand her the cane because I thought that looked pretentious, right? But what happened was the cane was flying towards me. I just grabbed it. I bent down to keep myself out of the floodlights, and then I handed it to her. And then I sat back in the chair and I said, what the hell just happened? That's literally that went through my mind. Like, what? Like, what just happened? That is an example of a clear outcome that is automatic. Like, my mind, you know, I've seen the show 15 times. I know that that's not supposed to happen in the show, right? I mean, maybe that would happen if you never saw the show before. But I've seen the show 15 times. So when that cane came flying after me, I ducked, grabbed it, and handed it to her, and sat down. And then after it was over, I was thinking, what just happened? That's what I'm talking about by having a clear outcome. And I'm sure she was appreciated, as she appreciated the fact that I handed it to her. I was thinking about it during the intermission, like, how do you do that act without the cane? I have no idea. But I'm hoping she would have figured it out, right? Maybe she would have had a clear outcome. So anyway, I hope I gave you something to think about. Next week, we're going to talk about the next letter in Diamond. Today, we talked about outcome. And just remember this. Here's the secret. Most people can get focused. Very few stay focused. Can you imagine that? We'll talk to you next week. Bye, everybody.
You've been listening to the Greg Dwyer Radio Show, brought to you by motivational speaker Greg Dwyer on buildingfortunesradio.com. Check out Greg at gregdwyer.com. Be sure to download his ebook at gregdwyerebook.com to stay focused on what matters most to you. That's www.gregdwyerebook.com. We want to thank you for listening, and go make a difference in your world.